You can now get 2 free audiobook downloads and a 30-day free trial at audible.bogosity.tv. Your choice from the world's largest selection of over 180,000 digital audiobooks and spoken word content for your iOS or Android device, Kindle, or MP3 player. Go to audible.bogosity.tv now. Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the week of April the 8th, 2018, the podcast that suffered for its sanity. This is your host, Shane Killian, and returning this week is Daniel Wilcox. Welcome back, Daniel.
Hey, good to be back.
Let's electroplate the news of the bogus. So yeah, there's all this talk about regulating social media, and we've covered a lot of that. But you know who is one of the biggest voices calling for regulation of Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg.
Of course. Didn't you do an episode about talking about something very closely related to this recently?
Yeah, and so the question is, why would he want to regulate his own industry? And regular viewers to my video and regular listeners to this podcast don't have to ask, because they know what Zuckerberg knows. Regulation protects the big guys from the competition.
Yeah.
And Facebook needs it. Last year alone, they lost 1.4 million users in the 12 to 17 demographic, a 10% decline, and 3 times what analysts have predicted. Overall, they lost 2.8 million under the age of 25. This year, they're looking at a possible 5.6% decline in users 12 through 17 and 5.8% in users 18 to 24, so it looks like Facebook might be going the way of MySpace.
It's already a reoccurring joke on TV that everyone's parents are on Facebook.
Yeah. And this is happening at a time when the rate of churn in S&P 500 firms will be about 50% over the next 10 years. And in fact, only 60 companies in the 1955 Fortune 500 list were still on that list in 2017. So it's just not the case that once you're this big company, you're going to stay big.
Yeah, so much for natural monopolies.
But that's what regulation is all about. Not forcing it on firms to make them behave better, but advocated for by those very firms to prop them up when they're not doing so well. When you can't compete in the market, you turn to government to regulate your industry. That's exactly what we saw with the poultry industry a month ago. Battery farms are losing business to cage-free chicken farms, so their rhetoric switched from let the market decide to please come regulate us. We saw the same thing with Uber. It started out being this competitor to the big taxi companies. Once it got dominant, it started lobbying for regulations out of fear of Lyft and other companies competing with them. And Uber is already pushing for a ban on individuals owning self-driving cars, so they'd have to use Ubers.
Uber fears the big pink mustache.
Who doesn't fear the big pink mustache? They don't have that anymore on Lyft cars. They stopped doing the pink mustache.
Huh.
Oh, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was cute.
Yeah. And you knew it was a Lyft car. This is what's motivating Zuckerberg. Whatever the new regulations will be, they'll raise the costs of doing business and increase the barriers for startups. And Zuckerberg, probably rightly, thinks that Facebook is in a much better position to absorb those costs than others. As soon as he started losing users, his rhetoric went from free market to please regulate us. What's it going to take for people to learn the trend? Say, if you're tired of the promos in this podcast, well, the patrons got it early and with no ads or promos. Just go to patreon.bogosity.tv and donate at any level. Do you have children or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary age children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at bogosity.tv/Tuttle Twins. Well, if anything, the Trump administration has increased the calls for crypto backdoors, thinking there must be some way to let the government in while not making it vulnerable to hackers and foreign governments, and the nerds could find a way if they'd only nerd harder. Well, once again, we see Robert Graham of Errata Security bring the awesome as he takes these people to task for being morally corrupt. It's based on a post from Lawfare, and I almost gave them biggest Bogon emitter, but someone worse came along. Anyway, the article said, quote, "There are two reasons why I think there hasn't been enough research to establish the no third-party access position. First, research in this area is taboo among security researchers. The second reason why I believe more research needs to be done, the fact that prominent non-government experts are publicly willing to try to build secure third-party access solutions, should make the information security community question the consensus view." Well, Graham pulled no punches. Quote, "This is nonsense. It's like claiming we haven't cured the common cold because researchers haven't spent enough effort at it. When researchers claim they've tried 10,000 ways to make something work, it's like insisting they haven't done enough because they haven't tried 10,001 times."
Yeah, that's not exactly how research works.
No. And we have the problem that we keep bringing up. Any solution that would allow U.S. law enforcement would also let China and Russia use it to oppress their own people.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make, like, a special magic backdoor just for the U.S. government. That's not how these things operate. Code is code.
But, I mean, if you think about it, the Lawfare blog actually gave the reason themselves why their own argument is bogus. There are many prominent non-governmental experts trying to build it, and they can't, because solving this problem is really, really, really hard and may even be impossible. And also, Graham says, quote, "Our opinions on the difficulty of the problem don't change simply because people are trying. Our opinions change when people are succeeding. People are always trying the impossible. That's not evidence that it's possible." And he's right. I mean, how many people are still trying to make perpetual motion machines?
Actually, don't know.
Well, I mean, there's still like some new free energy device, that comes up on the internet every now and then. And the stuff's just absolutely impossible because of the laws of physics, but they keep trying. The Lawfare blog also accuses security researchers of being extremists, of wanting everything to be absolute security. But as Graham says, quote, "Cryptographers aren't certain we've achieved even adequate security with current crypto regimes like SSL, TLS, HTTPS. Every few years we find horrible flaws in the old versions and have to develop new versions. If you steal somebody's iPhone today, it's so secure you can't decrypt anything on it. But then if you hold on to it for 5 years, someone will eventually figure out a hole, and then you'll be able to decrypt it, a hole that won't affect Apple's newer phones. The reason we think we can't get crypto backdoors correct is simply because we can't get crypto completely correct. It's implausible that we can get the backdoors working securely when we still have so much trouble getting encryption working correctly in the first place. We aren't talking about insignificantly less security. We're talking about going from barely adequate security to inadequate security."
The funny thing, the more I think about this, is the U.S. government and the various persons and groups advocating for these backdoors, do they not realize that these backdoors could also be used very easily against them?
People have pointed that out. Well, Graham also points out, quote, "Even if cryptographers do everything correctly, law enforcement themselves haven't proven themselves reliable. The NSA exposed its exploits, like the infamous Eternal Blue, and OPM lost all its security clearance records. If they can't keep those secrets, it's unreasonable to believe they can hold on to backdoor secrets."
Yeah.
And then there's also the point I keep making, which is, show us you can do this when the transmissions aren't encrypted. I mean, like the recent shooting in Florida, this guy posted what he was going to do all over social media under his real name publicly.
And nobody reacted to this.
Quote, Many continue to work on this problem. The reason you haven't heard much from them is because they haven't had much success. It's like blaming doctors for not doing more to work on interrogation drugs like truth serums. Sure, a lot of doctors won't work on this because it's distasteful, but at the same time, there are many drug companies who would love to profit by them. The reason they don't exist is not because they aren't spending enough money researching them, it's because there is no plausible solution in sight. Crypto-backdoors designed for law enforcement will significantly harm your security. You should trust the crypto experts on this, not lawyers. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. Here's something else we keep seeing. Just as atheists tend to be better informed about religion, libertarians tend to be better informed about politics. We've seen this before in a lot of ways, and now there's another study of voters that confirms it, this time from Yale University.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us either are this way because we're better informed, or we're better informed because we feel like we absolutely need to be. It's a survival necessity.
Well, yeah, because people know you're a libertarian, they're going to challenge you, and you need to be up on things to be able to rise to that challenge. I don't know of anyone who gets challenged on their political views like libertarians do. Well, we've talked about the studies showing that people will hold on to their political bias even in the face of contrary evidence. But that is far less the case with libertarians. In fact, libertarians measure as being the most analytical political group in the cognitive reflection test, a test showing how readily an individual will override his or her immediate emotional responses and truly consider a question. In 2016, one group that was especially non-analytical was Democrats who crossed the aisle to vote for Trump. Also, contrary to what we're told, non-voters and independents do poorly. This myth of the rational centrist weighing opinions and going with the best one is just that, pure myth. If anything, as we've seen before, they're more likely to go on their emotions. It just so happens that what their bias is about doesn't conform completely to either the left or the right, so they show up in the middle.
Yeah, you have to love how high and mighty centrists try to paint themselves as like, oh, I'm not some extremist, I'm quite the moderate.
Yeah, it's that same kind of smugness you get from vegetarians. You know what? If you're a vegetarian, good for you. It doesn't make you a better person. Democrats do measure as somewhat more analytical than Republicans, but even they don't hold a candle to the libertarians. Also, when you break it down, individuals who are economically conservative tend to be more analytical than those who are economically left, and those who are socially on the left tend to be more analytical than social conservatives.
That makes sense.
Yeah, especially when you consider that a lot of people describe libertarians as being fiscally conservative and socially liberal.
Well, because the social conservative and economic liberal perspective is essentially, let's not think about it, let's pawn it off.
Yeah, or let's just go with our fifis.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I've always said it is Republicans want to enforce morality in the bedroom, and liberals want to enforce morality in the boardroom. But that's what all their regulations are about. You know, it's about, oh, it's not fair, this is immoral, or whatever, like it's a religion with them. But libertarians tend to be more analytical across the board. Hashtag not all, and I'm sure we can all point to completely unreasonable and even kooky libertarians. But on the whole, those who are more analytical gravitate towards libertarianism, while those who are less analytical might be swayed in any direction depending on their own individual biases. So the next time you hear someone saying only an irrational person could be a libertarian, consider the more likely possibility that they're the irrational one. We live in a world where light bulbs connect to the internet, and recent attacks on them prove that your online security is under threat like never before. Not only your websites, but the internet-enabled devices you buy. And the biggest problem is weak passwords. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords on the web and on your internet-enabled devices, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers, all your computers, and even your mobile devices, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, software licenses, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications, manage passwords for your entire family, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. And now it's time to wrap a bunch of tinfoil around this week's biggest bogon emitter. And this week it goes to The Nation, where the laughably named Science and Health section engaged in yet more fear-mongering about cell phone transmissions causing brain cancer.
Hasn't this been debunked, decades ago?
Pretty much in every possible way, yeah. But their data apparently comes solely from George Carlo, and they begin by mentioning the time when security had to escort him away from a confrontation with Tom Wheeler, and I'm sure they want you to conclude that this is evidence of some sort of conspiracy, but I gotta tell you, this Carlo character is a crank. He promotes Bogosity like electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and he sells overpriced Mylar blankets claiming to protect you from it. He even wrote a paper claiming to have found a link between cell phone radiation and autism. And of course, it was the usual rambling of pseudoscientific nonsense. Oh, but it was published on Whale.2.
Tunisia?
I'm not sure where the last two letters are from, but I mean, that's one of those where it's become a general one. And Whale.2 is one of those really bad conspiracy crank sites.
Oi.
I mean, they make Alex Jones look like Bɪᴛᴄᴏɪ the science guy. They really do. And Carlo also was one of those guys behind that stick-on shield you could put on your phone that would supposedly block harmful cell phone radiation. You remember those?
No, I do not, but this all sounds like just an excuse for him to make something new to sell you.
Pretty much, yeah. But I mean, these, not so much in the age of smartphones, but back, when they were all flip phones and everything, they used to have these ads on TV all the time. It was this little funky shaped metallic thing you'd stick on your back, and it would supposedly protect you from the radiation.
But here's a question to these people. Why would they make the product and then make it so you have to buy a completely third-party product just so the product doesn't kill you?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, these things I think were selling for like $10 or $20 when it probably cost like 20 cents to make or something like that. But this is the one guy they're putting forward as evidence of a scientific consensus for their crap.
Wait 1 second. There's something I have to read out for these people's benefits. Consensus. Noun. General agreement. Not one guy.
Right.
One guy does not equate to a consensus on any level.
Now, they also rely on a lawsuit filed by David Reynard against NEC, claiming that their cell phones gave his wife a lethal brain tumor. Now, this claim is just completely ridiculous. He based the entire claim on the fact that his wife's brain tumor was shaped kind of like a cell phone antenna. And it's amazing how they left that part out of the article. And I guess the fact that he lost in court is just more evidence of the conspiracy.
Of course. Well, that's the thing. Conspiracies are very good at working with Sagan's dragon.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they would have you believe that they'll spend billions of dollars to cover it up, but won't spend 20 cents to paste this little thing on the phone that supposedly protects you from the radiation. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But that case did lead to Wheeler hiring Carlo to research the issue. But after a lot of crap that included things like Carlo tampering with evidence and silencing opponents, it resulted in him being drummed out. So it really seemed like Carlo was trying to get back at the industry who just kicked him out because he's incompetent and corrupt. Here's one you probably could have made money betting on. Turns out Carlo was in cahoots with a product liability lawyer who wanted to sue the mobile phone companies on behalf of brain cancer patients.
What? He had an agenda?
Oh, no. He's the not at all greedy champion of science against those evil cell phone companies. Also, does that remind you of anyone else? Not mentioning names, but his initials are Andrew Wakefield. But these guys writing for The Nation interpret everything in the light of the conspiracy. Wheeler says Carlo never gave him the actual study he supposedly used. Oh, well, that was just to shield the industry from liability. And he also said there were no peer-reviewed studies referenced. Well, that was just to tarnish their validity. They write, quote, "In the years to come, the WTR's cautionary findings will be replicated by numerous other scientists in the United States and around the world. This is absolutely untrue." But of course, they also mentioned that the WHO has accepted the carcinogenic effects of cell phones, and we've thrashed them before on the podcast about that.
Wait, the who?
Yep. Yeah, I know. That's not the only thing we trashed them on, though. They do a lot of kooky stuff. They're a political organization, and when you try to mix politics with science, it's just like when you try to mix politics and anything else. You know, agendas and biases end up overriding the truth. And of course, they use the scary language of the anti-science left, quote, "Carlo wondered whether his relationship with the industry might have turned out differently if cell phones had been safety tested before being allowed onto the consumer market, before profit took precedence over science. But it was too late. Wheeler and his fellow executives had made it clear," Carlo told The Nation, "that they would do what they had to do to protect their industry, but they were not of a mind to protect consumers or public health."
Okay, this is insane. Saying these products haven't been safety tested is not only pure idiocy, it's borderline libel.
Yeah. And then in the very next paragraph, they laughably state, quote, "This article does not argue that cell phones and other wireless technologies are necessarily dangerous. That is a matter for scientists to decide." But they already have. Cell phones are safe. It is physically impossible for radio waves at those frequencies to cause damage to cells, even if they were 100 times more powerful. And I have to point this out again. If there were anything at all to this, how come radio DJs back in the days where they broadcast directly from underneath the transmitter, how come they didn't have, this amazing level of brain tumors? Because they were similar frequencies and thousands of times as strong as cell phones. And they reprehensibly compare this to the PR issues from the coal and tobacco industries. Quote, "This Nation investigation," sorry, I can't say that with a straight face, "reveals that the wireless industry not only made the same moral choices that the tobacco and fossil fuel industries did, it also borrowed from the same public relations playbook those industries pioneered. The playbook's key insight is that an industry doesn't have to win the scientific argument about safety. It only has to keep the argument going. That amounts to a win for the industry because the apparent lack of certainty helps to reassure customers even as it fends off government regulations and lawsuits that might pinch profits."
You're the ones making up this crap just so you can sell these little worthless trinkets to... And you have the audacity to stand on the graves and gurneys of people who are actually suffering from cancer just so you can use them to bolster your agenda!
Yeah, because they're not at all motivated by profit, are they?
I'm sorry, I was going to save that for the end, but...
Well, I know you had to get it out. Sometimes you just have to. Now, one study they rely on is an Interphone study claiming that science has shown that radio waves interfere with DNA replication. They are lying. This was a negative study, and we covered this on an earlier edition of the podcast. It didn't come anywhere close to suggesting that there even might be a link between cell phones and brain cancer. From the study's conclusion, quote, "A reduced OR for glioma and meningioma related to ever having been a regular mobile phone user possibly reflects participation bias or other methodological limitations. No elevated OR for glioma or meningioma was observed 10 or more years after first cell phone use. Biases and errors limit the strength of the conclusions that can be drawn from these analyses and prevent a causal interpretation." And of course, the mountains of evidence showing it's safe is just shuttered away as being part of the conspiracy, while at the same time fear-mongering that the safety of cell phones is untested. And check out this language, quote, "The wiggle word here is overall. Since some of the Interphone studies did not find increased brain cancer rates, stipulating overall allowed Walls to ignore those that did. No, they want to take out the data showing no risk and only look at the ones that did. Overall means you look at all of the data and don't throw any of it out. Projection much?"
Yeah.
And they say, quote, "The scientific evidence that cell phones and wireless technologies in general can cause cancer and genetic damage is not definitive, but it is abundant and has been increasing over time." No, it has not. It's been going the other way. In fact, there aren't any studies with good methodology showing any real level of risk. And the article is full of scary weasel language like, "Billions of cell phone users have been subjected to a public health experiment without informed consent."
Oh, how scary!
And they keep blathering on about the cover-ups, and there's a lot more juxtaposing cell phone companies with tobacco and fossil fuel industries. You've even got, I quoted this earlier, the obviously phony claim of neutrality that they're not taking a position when they absolutely are. I mean, really, go through this article and replace cell phones with vaccines, and it'll be exactly like what comes from an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, it does sound like that.
So deal with it, people. GMOs aren't harmful, vaccines don't cause autism, and cell phones do not cause brain cancer. So all of that makes The Nation this week's biggest Bogon emitter. If you're going to shop online, use our special links to shop at Amazon. Clear your cookies and go to amazon.bogosity.tv, and you won't pay a penny more for your purchase. If you haven't used the mobile app in the last 12 months, or even at all, go to get5.bogosity.tv on your phone or tablet and get $5 off your order of $10 or more. Go to prime.bogosity.tv for a free 30-day trial of Amazon Prime and enjoy thousands of movies and TV episodes, borrow Kindle books, and get unlimited 2-day shipping for free. And speaking of Kindle, go to kindle.bogosity.tv for a 30-day free trial to Kindle Unlimited. Read over 1 million books and listen to thousands of audiobooks on any device. You can go to music.bogosity.tv and get a free 30-day trial of Amazon Music Unlimited with access to Amazon's entire library of 10 million songs, ad-free and with unlimited skips, and even download to listen offline. All great ways to help this podcast simply by shopping at Amazon. And now let's Section 8 this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
And we've talked about the Incredifail that is the F-35. This is supposedly the latest in fighter jet technology that the Pentagon paid $1.6 trillion for, and it doesn't even work. It's less maneuverable, extremely loud so it's not stealthy. It has high aft visibility, meaning it's easy to shoot it from behind. It's actually more visible than other fighter jets on certain radar frequencies. It's slower, it can't fly as high, it can't fly as low to get under enemy radar. Its jamming can be easily overcome. Range is limited because they stuck in so much crap there's hardly any room left for fuel, and really is only useful as a boondoggle for Lockheed Martin and senators and representatives who can create jobs in their districts building them.
So it is completely inadequate in every imaginable way.
Well, the problem was mainly that they tried to do everything with the F-35, and this is another example of how, if you try to do everything, you don't do anything well.
It's kind of like allocating stats in a properly balanced RPG. You try and allocate your stats everywhere, you're going to end up weak in all areas.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to pick areas where you want the strengths to be in, and then other areas have to sacrifice. I mean, those trade-offs, they especially have effects in things like engineering, aerodynamics, materials sciences, all sorts of things that relate to this.
Yeah, people often forget that the phrase jack of all trades was part of a longer phrase. Jack of all trades, master of none.
And that's what the F-35 is. But now there's something even dumber. Turns out the F-35 can't even communicate with other aircraft. And this will continue until at least 2021, when the communication systems on the F-22 can be upgraded at a cost of $330 million apiece, a total of almost $4 billion.
I bet you statists are glad you're voluntarily paying for this.
Yeah, I can call someone on Verizon from my T-Mobile phone, or from an internet Wi-Fi call, or even from a lot of these out-of-the-way chat services. They're all fine. The Pentagon can't even make two of their planes talk to each other. I mean, what do they do? Have one plane made by Microsoft and the other by Apple?
I wouldn't be surprised.
So I've got 1.6 trillion reasons why the Pentagon should be named this week's
Extraordinaire!
Well, that wraps up this See the Psychiatrist, Room 604 edition of the Bogosity podcast. Come join the discussion at forum.bogosity.tv or discord.bogosity.tv, and feel free to send a question, statement, news article, or rant in text or audio to podcast@bogosity.tv. This podcast depends on you to keep going, so please donate using the links on the website or the QR codes in the thumbnail, or support ShayDK on Patreon or Maker Support to get the podcast and YouTube videos early and without ads or promos. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Daniel Wilcox for joining me.
My pleasure.
Until next time, here's a quote from Robert Higgs. Nearly all libertarians were once conservatives or progressives or independent statists of some stripe, but scarcely any conservatives, progressives, or independent statists were once libertarians. This asymmetry in the direction of ideological migration is interesting and perhaps informative. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
Bogosity.
Want answers to creationist claims against evolution? Would you like to know more about evolution yourself, or even engage creationists more directly, with actual peer-reviewed sources to back you up? My book, How Evolution is Scientific, is designed to show the basics of evolutionary theory and how it is so well supported using the scientific method. It's impeccably sourced, with references to the actual scientific material, and is arranged using the creationists' own criteria of what is scientific. Using their own arguments against them, see how evolution is scientific, but creationism is not, based on observations, accurate predictions, logic, and evidence. Get answers to common creationist claims, and even a primer on abiogenesis, the start of all life. It's all in my book, How Evolution is Scientific, available at Amazon and on Kindle, EPUB, and PDF as well. Get How Evolution is Scientific and never be taken in by creationists again.